Were you ever that 1 in 1 million? If so, what's your story? For my 7th birthday we went to Disneyland. They just happened to be having a car a day giveaway when we were there. For my 7th birthday, Mickey Mouse gave me a Pontiac Firebird. I was diagnosed with leukemia. I got a bacteria growth which killed the leukemia, a real 1 in 1 million chance. When I was a kid, I was chilling in the water of the Mediterranean Sea in Turkey. Suddenly I felt an awful burning sensation on my stomach and my legs. I looked like I had been brutally sandpapered and I got a 40 degrees Celsius, 104 degrees Fahrenheit, fever. Turns out I made contact with a jellyfish, and later found out that it hadn't happened on that beach for 10 years or so. I was just extremely unlucky. No sure about the odds on this one, but I survived a non-survivable plane crash. I was on an old Po-2, famous for being very safe and uncrushable, on a tour of the desert in western China when I was like 7. My father's friend who hosted me and piloted the plane didn't survive, but somehow I got out with a concussion and apparently passed out for almost a day in the middle of the desert, in the wreckage of the crash, 50 kilometers from the town, airport, on the edge of the desert. The people who found me were some tree planters. They plant greens in the desert to protect towns from sandstorm. A lot of people live in these desert towns in China do this. Found me on their way picking up a shipment, and the only reason they looked was BC they were making a bet on how fast the egg would cook in the sand and went off the road to test. I slept wrong one night and pinched a nerve in my neck so severely I lost the right side of my body. It just went silent like it wasn't there for months. I woke up in the worst pain I've ever experienced and couldn't talk, move or do anything. The doctor thought I was having a stroke. My doctor had never seen a case as severe as mine and it was purely a freak accident. Recovery took months, but I have use of my leg and hand again, with some numbness. Other than pain and spasms I'm mostly back to normal. Had 2 11 centimeters benign tumors growing in my spine, resulting in gradual paralysis from my chest down. They had no idea how the tumors formed. Surgery took 11 hours when they thought it would take 4, because the tumors were so complexly woven throughout my spine. I now have pretty much half a spine and chronic pain, but I'd take that over losing my life from paralysis and being unable to breathe. The first one I don't know about the exact odds, but I was born on 7/7/77 and weighed 7 pounds and 7 ounces. Sadly though I clocked in at 6:50 am. The other is that around the age of 14 I started to notice the outsides of both of my feet starting to get much wider. After a couple of years of buying expensive custom made shoes they decided to perform surgery on my feet. Turned out I had extra muscle growth along with something else I don't recall at the moment. My podiatrist told me he submitted a scholarly article on it. May also have been genetic as when my dad was 3, he developed an extra toe growing out of each one of his big toes. I've got the middle toes on both feet webbed. So did Stalin. Quack. When I was a teenager I had just started working at the local Sears Auto Center Express Lube shop and on day 1 did a quick orientation and my first oil change. The manager walked away when he felt I was good to go and the oil change went well. Fast forward a few days later my manager asked me to come into his office and he explained that the oil filter I had used had one huge flaw. I didn't know what that was and it turned out the filter was pressed on backwards into the filter can and it wouldn't allow oil to flow in, and it damaged the motor. They had to purchase a new motor for the person and I still kept my job. He said it was a 1 in a million chance that would have happened and it did on my first oil change. Not sure if this is a blessing or a curse, but I'm an extremely tall human, 7'3". Yes really. Not sure how rare that is. I was struck by lightning while talking on a landline. This was in the early 90s. Lightning struck the telephone line and traveled through the handset to my ear. My parents drove me to the ER. I couldn't talk very well. My brain knew what I wanted to say, but my mouth didn't want to say it. I had a terrible stutter. My doctor told me that I had had a dose of good, old-fashioned electroshock therapy. My speech was normal the next day, but I get a terrible headache whenever a thunderstorm comes through. I have an unknown type of autosomal dominant centronuclear myopathy. My type of it is so rare that they haven't even seen it before. Getting diagnosed was a multi-year struggle. They pretty much had to rule out everything else. It doesn't feel great to be in this club by myself. Countless blood draws, MRIs, CAT scans and a biopsy and genetic test. So far, it looks like my father and I are the only ones with it. Yay. I had AFM, acute flaccid myelitis, when I was really young. It's like weak polio if that makes sense. My legs struggled to keep me up and I was consistently collapsing. However, the disease wasn't discovered at the time, so I wasn't diagnosed. I was in and out of hospital several times a week, being tested for all sorts of bone cancers. When the disease was discovered, I matched every description of it perfectly. But now, I am running cross country and doing alright. I am allergic to the cold. Like literally. I get intense hives, swelling, I pass out, and throw up. Doesn't even have to be freezing. Below 45 degrees without a jacket and I can't do it. I have to carry an EpiPen with me in the event that I drink something too cold or have a severe reaction. I have symmetric bilateral coloboma of the iris and retina. Essentially, my pupils are shaped like keyholes, instead of circles. A single coloboma is pretty rare, double coloboma is even more rare, and double symmetrical. Well, you get it. I have a very rare skin disease that only 1 in a million people get. I've been told that I'll probably never meet another person in my lifetime with it. Hailey disease for those interested. I was so freakishly allergic to ant and bee venom as a child that a single sting from a single little common black ant put me into anaphylactic shock. When my allergist was preparing to start immunotherapy for me, he found that the in-office lab equipment wasn't sensitive enough to measure the infinitesimally small amount of allergen with which to start my titration. So he had to send a sample of my blood to Johns Hopkins so that their lab could determine how much to give me. I did immunotherapy for several years to reach an immune response level at which it would be safe for me to basically exist in a non-frozen climate. Good news, though. I'm good now. I've had a few run-ins with ants and wasps since my immunotherapy and my body didn't freak out and shut down. And research indicates that if it hasn't done that after this long, I'm probably safe for, maybe forever. I don't have EpiPens and I'm not overly afraid of ants or bees. I was actually homeless for 4 years between 19-23 years old. As silly as it sounds, I used to earn some extra money at the time by helping around in a Yu-Gi-Oh tournament. It was my biggest hobby when I was younger and was something I felt confident about. I also didn't have a passport or a bank account, so I couldn't get a normal job UK. Anyway, so at the time I was stuck not earning enough money, without a passport, a bank account, or a real job. In the UK you won't get hired by 99% of companies if you don't have a passport to prove you have the right to work. So one day I got a phone call from a studio asking if I played Yu-Gi-Oh! And would consider myself a geek. Also if I wanted to be in a TV show. They said they would send me to another country as part of it. Being homeless, the biggest problems is being bored, so naturally I said yes, but told them I don't have a passport. No problem. We'll get you one straight away and pay for it ourselves. I ended up on a show called Geeks that you can still watch on Channel 4 OD. Because I got this passport, I was finally able to get a job, a bank account, and finally a house. Now I'm looking after my 10-month-old daughter who's playing while I type this. So why Yu-Gi-Oh save me from being homeless? I might be an anime characters. I once guessed a 6-digit random combination on the first try. It was the only try I planned to give, as a kind of scratchpad whatever moment. I had 8 wisdom teeth. The dentist had never seen anything like it and called the whole office in to marvel at my teeth. Got a rare, but potentially deadly rash from a medication. I laughed when I first saw the bottle with the warning, and said knowing my luck I'd get it. I did. Ended up in a burn unit with my skin sloughing off, sad face, not a fun week. Uterus ruptured into my bladder after birth of my youngest. It was caught in, away from a major artery. Nearly died. I own a Lego minifigure called Mr. Gold. This particular minifig was to celebrate the 10th series of the Lego figurine line. They are sort of like grab bags, you can feel for them, but you don't know what minifigure you're really going to get. So, because they were celebrating, they thought it was a good idea to only make $5,000 of these. Anyways, when I was younger and even now I was really good knowing which figures they are simply by looking at the figures pieces and feeling out those pieces. I really like the minifigures cause I thought they were really cool and unique, so I really wanted Mr. Gold, and me and my mum hunted for it for a long time. But after a while I gave up. Then one day I was at the Lego store and felt the distinct diamond piece and freaked out. Finding this figure was a downright fantasy. I'm 18 now and still want to relive 12-year-old me's pure joy as he opened the packaging. Diagnosed with an extremely rare liver disease, primary hyperoxaluria. Some 300 people in the United States currently have it. Basically pass a lot of kidney stones and need a double transplant to fix. My ex was struck by lightning several times and lived. Died in a car accident though, so not as lucky as he claimed to be. I was on Tinder and was talking to this guy. He was supposed to meet me for dinner. I texted him and no answer. Then I texted him on Tinder. Said that he couldn't make it. However, I got a text back from the number. It wasn't the guy that I thought I texted. It was the actor Gerard Butler. I thought he was lying until he FaceTimed me. Nice guy. No idea on the actual numbers, but I was born with 12 fingers. Identical extra digits on each hand. This is my mum's story and I've posted it before, but she once called her friend back in the day on the landline, and another lady answered. My mum asks if her friend was there and the lady says sure, I'll get her. My mum's friend hops on the phone and asks how she was here. Turns out my mum got a number wrong when dialing. Called a random house where someone was hosting a Tupperware party and my mum's friend just happened to be attending it. What are the odds of that shit?